This is the story of the Outlaw League that changed basketball forever. In 1967, a group of businessmen decided to challenge the NBA, not by following its rules, but by breaking all of them. They used a red, white, and blue ball. They invented the slam dunk contest, and they signed players the NBA refused to touch. What started as a chaotic experiment became a revolution that forced the biggest merger in sports history. The NBA tried to kill them, then tried to ignore them, and finally had no choice but to absorb them.
Well, how the turntable.
The NBA in the mid-60s was a stuffy, exclusive club. It was slow, traditional, and controlled by a handful of owners who acted like gatekeepers. Dennis Murphy stepped in. He was not a basketball genius. He was a promoter who saw an opening. Murphy realized that the NBA controlled the big cities, but millions of fans in places like Indianapolis, San Antonio, and Denver were starving for professional sports. His pitch was simple and almost laughable. For a franchise fee of just $5,000, about the price of a nice car back then, you could own a professional basketball team.
Can't hold a charge and the reception isn't very.
Shut up and take my money.
The idea sounded like a scam. To the NBA, it was a joke. Murphy sold chaos rather than stability. He gathered a ragtag group of owners, some with deep pockets and others who barely had enough to pay for uniforms. And in 1967, the American Basketball Association was born. Starting a revolution requires a flag. For the ABA, that flag was the basketball itself. The league's first commissioner was George Mikan, the NBA's first true superstar. Mikan understood that the standard orange basketball blended into the brown court on fuzzy 1960s TV screens. It was hard to follow. So Mikan introduced a ball that was red, white, and blue. It was patriotic, loud, and created a hypnotic strobe effect when it spun through the air. NBA coaches called it a beach ball and a gimmick that belonged in a circus.
The championship match. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
But the fans loved it. This signaled that the new league intended to put on a show rather than just play basketball. A colored ball cannot sell tickets if nobody knows the players. The ABA needed a star, and they wanted to steal one from the NBA. Rick Barry was the NBA's leading scorer, a superstar for the San Francisco Warriors who had just averaged 35 points a game. He was the golden boy. In 1967, he did the unthinkable and signed with the ABA's Oakland Oaks.
Be faster! Wait, that's illegal. No, it isn't. I don't want it.
This was the opening volley in a war that would last 9 years. The NBA was furious. They sued Barry, forcing him to sit out an entire season. But the damage was done. By signing Barry, the ABA proved it was a legitimate threat, with checkbooks big enough to buy the best players in the world, rather than a minor league. Rick Barry gave the league star power, and Spencer Haywood provided its soul. In 1969, the NBA had a strict rule. You could not be drafted until your college class graduated. It meant players were forced to play for free in the NCAA for 4 years, while their families often lived in poverty. Haywood, a teenage phenom who had just won an Olympic gold medal, was tired of waiting. His mother was picking cotton in Mississippi for $2 a day, and he needed to work. The NBA slammed the door in his face.
So that's against the rules, and you can't sit with us. Whatever.
The ABA opened theirs. They created the hardship rule, allowing Haywood to turn pro early. The NBA sued, claiming it would destroy the sport. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and Haywood won. The ABA signed him and simultaneously changed labor laws for every athlete in America. Watching an NBA game from the 1960s reveals a lot of guys standing around the paint throwing elbows. It was crowded and congested. The ABA decided to spread the floor. They introduced the three-point line, a concept the NBA called a desperate gimmick, but it completely changed the math of basketball. A 5'9" guard could suddenly be as dangerous as a 7-foot center.
Future's now, old man. Move the car over your science project.
Oh, bro.
It opened up driving lanes and rewarded skill over brute strength. Players like Louis Dampier and Darryl Carrier started launching shots from 25 feet, something that would get you benched in the NBA. This rule marked the birth of modern basketball. The spacing, the pace, and the excitement we see today started because the ABA needed a way to make the game more entertaining.
Are you not entertained? Are you not? Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Julius Erving arrived next. He was a cultural phenomenon rather than just a basketball player. When he joined the Virginia Squires and later the New York Nets, he did things that defied physics.
Give it to me faster! Wait, that's illegal. No, it isn't.
The NBA had great players, but they played a horizontal game. Dr. J played vertically. He took off from the foul line. He palmed the ball like a grapefruit and swooped around defenders in midair. There is no footage of some of his greatest dunks because ABA games were rarely televised nationally. His legend grew through word of mouth. People would leave arenas shaking their heads, telling their friends, "You won't believe what I just saw." Erving became the face of the league, the coolest man in sports, and the single biggest reason the NBA eventually had to surrender. The ABA was absolutely insane in addition to its polished stars. No team embodied this better than the Spirits of St. Louis. They had a roster full of talent and zero discipline. Their star forward, Marvin "Bad News" Barnes, was as famous for his off-court antics as his 20-point games. One legendary story involves the team preparing for a flight from Louisville to St. Louis. Because of the time zone change, the flight was scheduled to land at 7:56 a.m., 4 minutes before it took off at 8 a.m. Barnes looked at the ticket, shook his head, and refused to board. He told the team, "I ain't getting in no damn time machine." He rented a car instead.
Problems require modern solutions.
The ABA combined brilliant talent, questionable logic, and stories one simply could not invent. By 1976, the league was struggling financially, but they had one last trick. At the All-Star game in Denver, they decided to hold a competition during halftime. It was the first ever slam dunk contest. The NBA had never dreamed of such a thing. 5 players entered, but it was really a coronation for Julius Erving. In front of a raucous crowd, Dr. J grabbed the ball, ran the length of the floor, and launched himself from the free throw line. The image of him floating through the air, afro blowing in the wind, became iconic. He slammed it home and won the contest.
Slam dunk. Each contestant
somewhat like a girl. Oh! Oh! Ah!
It remains one of the most famous moments in basketball history, proving that although the NBA had the money, the ABA possessed the magic. For years, NBA elitists claimed the ABA was a minor league full of rejects. They were wrong. We know this because the two leagues actually played each other. From 1971 to 1975, they held exhibition games that were anything but friendly. These were grudge matches. The NBA players wanted to protect their territory. The ABA players wanted to prove they belonged. The statistics reflect this reality. Over the course of the rivalry, the ABA won the series 79 games to 76. In the final years, the gap widened, with ABA teams winning nearly 2/3 of the matchups. The Denver Nuggets and Kentucky Colonels routinely blew out NBA squads. It became undeniable that the best basketball in the world occurred in the ABA rather than in Boston or Los Angeles. Despite the talent, the ABA was bleeding money.
My God. I am never going to financially recover from it.
They had no national TV contract, and salaries were spiraling out of control because of the bidding wars for players. By the 1975-76 season, the league was on life support. Teams were folding in the middle of the season. The Utah Stars shut down. The San Diego Sails lasted just 11 games. The Virginia Squires, who had discovered Dr. J, were so broke they couldn't pay their phone bills and were forced to fold just days before the end. The league was down to just 6 teams. It was a game of chicken. The ABA owners knew they couldn't survive another year, but they also knew the NBA needed their stars. The merger was a desperate rescue mission rather than a marriage of love. In the summer of 1976, the war finally ended. The NBA agreed to accept 4 ABA teams: the New York Nets, the Denver Nuggets, the Indiana Pacers, and the San Antonio Spurs. But the terms were brutal. The NBA treated them like conquered enemies. Each team had to pay a massive $3.2 million entry fee. They were not allowed to share in TV revenue for years.
Nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
The Nets were even forced to pay an extra indemnity fee to the Knicks for invading their territory. A financial hit so severe, it forced them to sell Dr. J to the Philadelphia 76ers. The Kentucky Colonels were bought out and folded. That left one team, the Spirits of St. Louis. They were not invited to the NBA, but their owners were about to pull off the greatest heist in sports history. The owners of the Spirits of St. Louis, Ozzie and Daniel Silna, knew their team wasn't joining the NBA. So they negotiated a buyout. They agreed to fold the team for a small upfront payment, but with one tiny clause added to the contract. They demanded 1/7 of the television revenue earned by the 4 former ABA teams forever. The NBA lawyers laughed. TV revenue was negligible in 1976. The finals were shown on tape delay. They signed the deal believing it was cheap. They were incorrect. As the NBA exploded in global popularity in the 80s and 90s, that TV money turned into billions. The Silna brothers sat back and collected checks for decades, eventually earning over $300 million for a team that didn't exist. In 2014, the NBA finally paid them $500 million just to tear up the contract. When the 1976-77 NBA season started, the old guard expected the ABA players to fail. They took over instead. In the first All-Star game after the merger, 10 of the 24 players were from the ABA. Julius Erving won the MVP, even though his team lost the game. In the NBA Finals that year, the Philadelphia 76ers faced the Portland Trail Blazers. 5 of the 10 starters in that series were former ABA players. 4 of the top 10 scorers in the entire league that season came from the Rebel League. The NBA bought the ABA teams, yet the ABA players captured the league's soul. The slower, methodical style of the old NBA was dead.
Future's now, old man.
The era of speed, dunks, and flair had officially arrived. The modern NBA is a league driven by the three-point shot. The slam dunk contest is the highlight of All-Star Weekend. Players turn pro after 1 year of college. It is a fast-paced, high-flying game played above the rim. That represents the living ghost of the ABA rather than the legacy of the old NBA. The red, white, and blue ball may be gone, but the spirit of the Outlaw League won the war. Every time Steph Curry pulls up from 30 feet, or LeBron James drives for a tomahawk dunk, they're paying tribute to the league that dared to be different. The ABA evolved the NBA instead of merely merging with it. The history also includes the tragedy and triumph of Connie Hawkins. Connie the Hawk Hawkins preceded Dr. J, blackballed by the NBA for a gambling scandal he was never proven to be involved in.
It's unfair.
Hawkins was forced to play with the Harlem Globetrotters and in the early ABA. He was the prototype for the modern forward. Big hands, graceful moves, and an ability to swoop to the hoop that left defenders frozen. He eventually sued his way into the NBA, but his prime years were spent in the shadows. The ABA served as a league of second chances for players like Hawkins, who did not fit the NBA's mold or moral code. It was a lifeline. The American Basketball Association existed for only 9 seasons. It lost money every single year.
And it's gone.
Most of its teams folded, and its history is often treated as a footnote. But without the chaos of the ABA, basketball would look nothing like the global phenomenon it is today. They forced the establishment to change, not by asking politely, but by being better, faster, and cooler. The Outlaws rewrote the rulebook in addition to surviving. If you enjoyed this look into basketball history, hit like and subscribe for more.